The bitter scent of burnt coffee and cheap printer ink was the constant, low-grade hum of my existence. I was 38 years old, a woman whose entire life was invested in the solitary, often grueling pursuit of creative entrepreneurship. My modest studio apartment in the vibrant art district of New Orleans, Louisiana, was less a home and more a factory for dreams. A cluttered space where I, Amelia Hayes, developed and perfected proprietary design software for small batch, custom manufacturing. My technology wasn't just code, it was a democratization of design, allowing individual artisans to create complex, high-quality products without massive industrial overhead. It was my life's work, my genius, and my ticket to profound professional independence. The man who stole that independence and attempted to crush my spirit was Victor Sterling. Victor was not just a competitor. He was my partner, my fiancé, and the charismatic chief marketing officer I brought into my small venture, Artisan Core. I was the engineer, the quiet genius in the back room. Victor was the public face, the financial strategist who secured initial seed funding. I loved him completely, blinding myself to the ambition that lay behind his polished smile. I gave him full administrative and source code access, believing that our love and our business were a single, unbreakable entity, destined for global success. The betrayal was slow, insidious, and executed with cold, deliberate cruelty over a period of 8 months. Victor grew restless, frustrated by the slow organic growth of the artisan market. He demanded we pivot to massive, immediate corporate licensing, a move I refused, knowing it would compromise the ethical integrity of my original design. Our conflict was ideological, and Victor chose money over morality. He secretly negotiated a massive, lucrative buyout of Artisan Core's intellectual property with a Silicon Valley behemoth, OmniTech Dynamics, structuring the deal to exclude me entirely. He claimed I was emotionally attached to a flawed business model, and that he was rescuing the technology from my romantic idealism. The final act of betrayal happened on the day the legal papers were signed. I was preparing a major technical presentation in my studio when the eviction notice arrived. Victor had used a clause in our shared commercial lease, signing the studio space over to a shell corporation he controlled. He then personally delivered the legal documents, his face a mask of patronizing pity. "Amelia, darling, you were always too soft for this world. I've taken the technology and secured my future. You've been bought out of the partnership for a nominal sum, enough to cover your rent for 3 months. I've already wired the money. Don't bother fighting. The deal is airtight. You can keep the old computer and your sketches. I have the code, and I have the money." He left me standing amid the ruins of my studio, amidst the boxes and the packing tape, with the sickening realization that he had orchestrated my financial, professional, and personal destruction to secure his own future with OmniTech. He didn't just steal my code. He stole my entire future, my dignity, and the very ground beneath my feet. The public humiliation was immediate and overwhelming. Victor and OmniTech launched a preemptive public relations campaign, preemptively destroying my professional image. They circulated the narrative that I, Amelia Hayes, was a desperate, unstable former partner whose early, brilliant concepts needed professional rescue from my own erratic business management. They called me weak, desperate, and broken, ensuring that no competing firm would ever hire the unstable genius. I was left penniless, professionally toxic, and staring at the utter annihilation of my life's work. They thought I was broken and ruined, defeated by the combined forces of money and professional malice. They forgot that the true power of an architect lies not in the building itself, but in the unassailable mastery of the blueprint. I smiled, not in defeat, but in a cold, quiet realization. They thought I was broken, but I was about to become unstoppable, ruthless, and free to wage a war of professional annihilation, built on the very code Victor stole. The months following the betrayal were the absolute nadir of my life, a period of forced, bitter transformation. The public narrative created by Victor Sterling and OmniTech Dynamics was brutally effective. The design and tech community, quick to embrace the victor and shun the outcast, echoed the narrative of my instability and erratic genius. I lost my studio, sold my few remaining valuable assets, and relocated to a grim, temporary rental in a neglected part of Dallas, Texas, a city chosen purely for its low cost of living and its vast distance from Victor's social orbit. My professional life was dead. My financial life was zero. The shame of being publicly branded as broken and desperate was a constant cold weight, but the despair was quickly consumed by a cold, surgical focus. Victor's mistake was intellectual. He believed that the artisan core software was just a product he could sell. He failed to comprehend that the core of the code, the proprietary indexing algorithms and the security encryption, was an extension of my own mind, a language I spoke fluently and intimately. I realized my most potent weapon wasn't money. It was the unassailable knowledge of a fatal vulnerability I had deliberately embedded deep within the code's operating system years ago. A digital failsafe Victor was too technically illiterate and arrogant to ever discover. I had built a master backdoor into the artisan core system, a complex, layered diagnostic tool, invisible to external users, designed to run continuous security checks and maintain a redundant, off-site archive of all user data. This backdoor was controlled by a specific, unique signature of commands that only I knew. Victor, in selling the code to OmniTech, had handed them a ticking digital time bomb. The fatal flaw wasn't my instability. It was the potential for massive, untraceable data leaks via my backdoor, a flaw that would expose OmniTech and Victor to crippling regulatory violations and catastrophic client loss. My first act of vengeance was to test the backdoor. I used a cheap, disposable laptop and a secure, anonymous network to launch a passive diagnostic ping into the OmniTech servers. The ping confirmed my hypothesis. Victor had integrated the stolen code into OmniTech's massive industrial network without understanding the necessity of disabling my proprietary backdoor. The entire OmniTech network, built on the stolen foundation of Artisan Core, was secretly accessible to me. I was the silent, invisible mistress of their entire digital infrastructure. I needed two things to execute the final, absolute destruction: a legitimate legal shield and unquestionable financial backing. I reached out to Dr. Eleanor Vance, a formidable, nationally recognized intellectual property defense lawyer in New York City. I didn't send her a desperate email. I sent a single encrypted digital document, a printout of OmniTech's active current user list, accessed via an IP address I knew was impossible to breach legally, along with a concise, factual summary of the code's vulnerability and the fraud Victor committed. Eleanor, a woman who valued evidence above all, was stunned by the proof of my technical access. The initial, anonymous communication led to a secure meeting. I presented Eleanor with the full plan. I would use the backdoor to prove the system's unreliability and expose the fraud, securing her legal and financial backing. Eleanor, recognizing the unprecedented power of the evidence, the potential for crippling litigation against a corporate giant, agreed to take my case. The partnership was sealed. The money, the power, and the legal machine Victor thought would crush me were about to be turned against him. They called me weak, desperate, and broken, but I was about to become the unstoppable, ruthless, and free strategic force that would dismantle his entire stolen empire. I know this might just be a voice in your ear, detailing the surgical, slow-motion destruction of a life, but if the feeling of being financially trapped or fighting to reclaim your intellectual power after being suppressed resonates with your own journey, you belong right here. We are a community built on the bedrock of unyielding evidence, where patience is our most dangerous weapon. Every time you hit that subscribe button, you are casting a vote for strategic precision and the power of the overlooked individual. And please, tell me in the comments below, what's the single most crucial piece of information you ever realized someone was deliberately hiding from you? Your stories are the fuel that keeps this channel dedicated to the silent, victorious battles of truth and transformation. Thank you for being here. The partnership with Dr. Eleanor Vance launched my transition from exiled victim to strategic aggressor. Eleanor didn't treat me as a client. She treated me as a master operative and a primary asset in what she correctly termed a corporate counter-espionage war. Her first step was to secure a massive, confidential investment from a consortium of private equity firms eager for the potentially lucrative fallout from a successful patent invalidation suit against OmniTech Dynamics. This guaranteed the financial armor I needed to withstand Victor's counterattacks. I was no longer fighting with empty pockets. I was fighting with the war chest of serious corporate players. My immediate focus was not on filing the lawsuit, but on demonstrating the severity of the vulnerability to the investors and to the legal team. I needed proof that the backdoor was not just a theoretical flaw, but a clear and present danger to OmniTech's entire industrial client base. I spent 3 months running highly focused, passive diagnostic audits through the back door I controlled. I wasn't stealing data. I was creating a comprehensive vulnerability report, detailing the precise mechanisms by which an external actor, me, could access and compromise OmniTech's client lists, design schematics, and financial forecasts. The report, presented to Eleanor and the consortium, was a devastating piece of digital architecture. It proved that the stolen artisan core code, with my backdoor active, was a fundamental security flaw that violated multiple SEC data integrity regulations and guaranteed massive product liability exposure. The investors immediately understood the gravity. OmniTech hadn't bought a product. They had bought a ticking digital bomb, and I held the detonator. Eleanor's legal strategy was pure genius, targeting the weakest point of OmniTech and Victor, the patent validity itself. We filed a massive, complex lawsuit in Delaware federal court for patent fraud, intellectual property theft, and failure to disclose material security flaws. The suit was revolutionary, arguing that the core design patent, filed solely by Victor Sterling, was invalid because A. It was demonstrably stolen from me, and B. The commercialized version contained a known, concealed security vulnerability that rendered the product commercially dishonest and ethically compromised, a flaw Victor and OmniTech failed to disclose. Victor Sterling's immediate reaction to the lawsuit was pure, arrogant contempt. Backed by OmniTech's massive legal team, he launched his most aggressive public defense yet, giving interviews where he painted me as a paranoid, vindictive ex-fiancé whose claims were delusional fantasies. The firm's lawyers filed a massive motion to dismiss, relying entirely on the initial successful patent registration and Victor's narrative of my instability. This was their critical mistake. They focused on the emotional lie while ignoring the unassailable technical evidence I possessed. The legal battle quickly shifted into the discovery phase, where the strength of my evidence truly shone. Eleanor and I, using our court-authorized discovery request, forced OmniTech to submit the entire source code for the artisan core product for secure third-party forensic analysis. I secretly advised the forensic team, guiding them with surgical precision to the exact line of code where the back door was intentionally written, a line that Victor was too ignorant to ever explain or justify. I was now using the legal system to force Victor to expose the proof of my mastery and his technical illiteracy. The shame of his initial lie, that he was the stabilizing genius, was about to be replaced by the unyielding, documented truth of his fraud. The mandatory forensic analysis of the artisan core source code, conducted by a court-appointed independent security firm, was the moment the digital architecture of Victor's empire began to crumble. The analysis team, following the precise guidance I provided to Eleanor, immediately isolated the intentional proprietary backdoor I had embedded. Their final report confirmed my claims. The vulnerability was real, demonstrably engineered for unauthorized access, and constituted a fundamental security flaw that invalidated OmniTech's claims of data integrity. This was the unassailable evidence of patent fraud and failure to disclose a material security risk. The report, once submitted to the Delaware court, shifted the entire legal dynamic from a mere intellectual property dispute into a massive corporate regulatory crisis. The court, presented with the definitive forensic proof, immediately issued an emergency injunction, temporarily suspending the validity of the artisan core patent pending the final fraud ruling. The news was a financial detonation for OmniTech Dynamics. Their stock price plummeted, and their major industrial clients, relying on the guarantee of data security, began a catastrophic exodus. Victor Sterling, the celebrated CMO, was instantly transformed from an asset into an existential liability. The subsequent legal phase was a relentless, multi-front assault. Eleanor leveraged the emergency injunction to secure a massive prejudgment seizure motion against Victor's personal assets, arguing that his demonstrated history of fraud and his current financial volatility made him a severe flight risk. The court granted the motion, and Victor's luxury assets, his expensive home in the Hamptons, his sports cars, and his offshore accounts, were instantly frozen and seized. The man who had mocked my desperation was now facing his own absolute financial ruin, legally orchestrated by the woman he thought was broken. Facing the prospect of total financial annihilation, and looming federal charges for patent fraud and securities fraud due to the non-disclosure of the security flaw to investors, OmniTech Dynamics board moved with ruthless speed. They fired Victor Sterling for gross professional misconduct and material fraud, publicly disassociating themselves from the toxic scandal he created. The very corporate machine he had used to crush me was now consuming him entirely. He was left with no job, no money, and no legal protection, facing the full, terrifying might of the legal and financial system. The public narrative flipped entirely. The story was no longer about the unstable genius, but about the corporate fraudster who stole an invention and poisoned it with malice. I, Amelia Hayes, became the public face of scientific integrity and resilience, the quiet inventor who used her genius to defeat a corporate behemoth built on a lie. They had called me weak, desperate, and broken. Now, the entire world called me unstoppable, ruthless, and free. The final decisive confrontation occurred during the mandatory settlement and asset liquidation conference. This was not a trial, it was a surrender. OmniTech Dynamics, having fired Victor, was desperate to mitigate its own financial liability, while Victor was entirely focused on avoiding criminal prosecution. The settlement terms, dictated by Eleanor and myself, were absolute and designed for the complete financial and professional restoration of my life. I demanded, and received, the immediate, full, and public transfer of the DSCSM patent into my sole name, Dr. Amelia Stone, a massive 9-figure financial settlement covering all lost wages, professional damages, and the cost of the original legal challenges, and most importantly, a legally mandated public statement issued by Terra Nova Global, explicitly acknowledging the invaluable scientific contribution of Dr. Amelia Stone and retracting all prior claims regarding my professional instability. The moment of the final legal signing was held in a secure office in New York. Robert Vance did not attend. Instead, he was represented by a nervous, low-level attorney who slid the notarized patent transfer and the settlement check across the table. The symbolic victory was immense. The man who had stolen my future and cast me out had been legally and financially defeated by the truth he thought he could silence. The final paperwork, ensuring my immediate financial security and the return of my intellectual property, was signed. I was no longer an exiled geologist. I was the multimillionaire founder of a new era of ethical environmental consulting. The final, decisive confrontation occurred during the mandatory settlement and asset liquidation conference. This was not a trial, it was a surrender. OmniTech Dynamics, having fired Victor, was desperate to mitigate its own financial liability, while Victor was entirely focused on avoiding criminal prosecution. The settlement terms, dictated by Eleanor and myself, were absolute and designed for the complete financial and professional restoration of my life. I demanded and received the immediate, full, and public transfer of the Artisan Core patent into my sole name, Amelia Hayes, a massive, 9-figure financial settlement covering all lost wages, professional damages, and the cost of the original legal challenges, and, most importantly, a legally mandated public statement issued by OmniTech, explicitly acknowledging the invaluable intellectual contribution of Amelia Hayes, and retracting all prior claims regarding my professional instability. The conference was held in a secure, neutral office in New York. The room was sterile, silent, and heavy with the weight of absolute defeat. Victor walked in, without legal representation, a ghost of his former self. His expensive clothes were ill-fitting, his eyes were empty. He signed the financial documents with a trembling hand, guaranteeing my total financial security and his personal bankruptcy. Eleanor then left the room, leaving Victor and me alone for the last necessary reckoning. I slid the public confession, a document detailing every lie, every theft, and every malicious act, across the table. Victor looked at the document, then up at me, his eyes pleading for a final reprieve. "Amelia, please. I've lost everything. I have nothing left. Can't you just let me disappear? Why do you need the public shame? I'm begging you. Just let me have some silence." I looked at him, the man who had robbed me of my purpose and dignity, and delivered my final, unscripted truth. "You needed the public shame, Victor. You spent 3 years lying, smiling, and calling me unstable. You thought I was broken and desperate. but I used the quiet desperation you gave me to become the most formidable opponent you ever faced. You built your house on a lie, and I am the architect who revealed the foundation. You stole my peace. Now you will pay with your reputation." He picked up the pen and, with a final, defeated shudder, signed the full, public confession of his total professional ruin. I walked out, leaving him alone in the sterile silence, the true architect of his own spectacular humiliation. Wow, you've stayed with me through the absolute core of this intellectual and emotional war, the meticulous takedown of a powerful man built on a lie. If you felt that immense, cold surge of satisfaction when the evidence delivered the final, unassailable blow, you know why this story matters. This community is built on the shared belief that integrity and strategic truth will always defeat the smiling lie. If you haven't already, please, take a moment to gently tap that subscribe button and affirm the power of the evidence. And now, my deepest, most heartfelt invitation. We all carry a secret truth about a system or a person that needs to be exposed. Share the single most important lesson you learned about identifying a systemic flaw, whether in a relationship or a business. Your wisdom and authenticity are the foundation of this channel. Also, please suggest any deeply emotional, human-focused themes you want to see explored next. Thank you for being a genuine, authentic part of this fight. The day the signed confession was publicly released, it became a global sensation. The financial markets and the tech community reeled, not just from the scope of OmniTech's regulatory disaster, but from the raw, undeniable malice of Victor Sterling's actions. The narrative was finally, irrevocably fixed. I was the hero of integrity, the genius who defeated the corporate fraudster, and Victor was the architect of his own professional annihilation. The public apology and confession, written by Eleanor and signed by Victor, cleared my name entirely, transforming my former stigma into a badge of unshakable resilience. My own life began its rapid ascent. I was now the sole owner of the Artisan Core patent and a multimillionaire, legally vindicated and ethically restored. I used the immediate capital to found Hayes Design Labs, a new technology firm built on the uncompromised principles of my original vision. My focus was not on immediate profit, but on systemic integrity, ensuring the technology was deployed ethically, protecting small artisans and guaranteeing absolute data security. The market response was overwhelming. Clients flocked to the firm, drawn not just by the technology, but by the power of my unassailable ethical brand. The disgrace of Victor Sterling became a permanent fixture of the corporate landscape. The Bar Association's Ethics Committee pursued its own inquiry, swiftly disbarring Victor for his participation in the Soulless Energy cover-up, a parallel investigation I had secretly facilitated years prior. He faced total financial ruin from his former investors, who systematically stripped him of every remaining asset. The charismatic CMO was left with the emptiness of his own ambition and the cold reality of a world that had utterly erased him. He became a cautionary ghost, haunting the edges of the financial district, a living symbol of professional malfeasance. I, meanwhile, transformed the trauma into a platform for systemic reform. I used my expertise to develop and teach new, mandatory ethical compliance programs for young entrepreneurs, focusing on the critical dangers of internal corruption and intellectual property fraud. I made sure that every future generation of business leaders would learn the precise mechanisms of Victor Sterling's failure, ensuring his memory served as a perpetual, humiliating deterrent. The ascent of Hayes Design Labs was meteoric, quickly establishing itself as the gold standard for secure, ethical design technology. I was a powerful, influential figure, dictating the terms of innovation and integrity in the high-stakes world of custom manufacturing. My work was national in scope, impacting policy and perception across the industry. I found a profound, quiet satisfaction in this work, a fulfillment that the painful shadow of my past had only amplified. My true value, my strategic intellect, and my unyielding ethical code was finally operating at its maximum potential. I channeled a portion of my massive wealth into establishing the Victor Sterling Transparency and Ethics Fellowship at a major university engineering school. The irony was exquisite and deliberate. The scholarship was named with icy precision after Victor Sterling, not to honor him, but to memorialize his moral collapse. The public announcement, managed by my firm, simply stated that the fellowship was established to recognize the urgent need for absolute ethical transparency and IP integrity, a necessity highlighted by the challenges in Mr. Sterling's career. The move was devastatingly subtle. I used his name as a permanent public synonym for the consequences of corruption. Every year, ambitious ethical engineering students would receive funding in his name, dedicating their careers to correcting the very kind of fraud he committed. The fellowship was a living, breathing testament to his professional downfall, ensuring that his legacy was not success, but a perpetual public cautionary tale of absolute moral failure. Victor, in his exile, was powerless to stop it. He became permanently etched into the public record not as a business titan, but as the ghost of a fraud, his name repurposed to fund the very ethical standards he had spent his life violating. I had ensured his humiliation was not fleeting, but perpetual. The years that followed were marked by the total professional and social isolation of Victor Sterling. He attempted to launch several failed ventures, only to be shut down by ethical warnings issued by the very regulatory bodies I had quietly influenced. The courts systematically stripped him of his remaining assets, ensuring his financial annihilation was complete. He was not just broke, he was unemployable and uncreditworthy, a man without a country in the world he once ruled. The coldness of his fate was a precise reflection of the coldness with which he had discarded me. I, meanwhile, was at the height of my professional power. I often lectured at the very engineering school that hosted the Victor Sterling Fellowship, using the cautionary details of his case to teach advanced ethics and IP defense. I never referred to him as my former partner, only as the individual who demonstrated a catastrophic failure of character. The irony was delicious and total. I had come back as everything he could never be, ethically unassailable, genuinely respected, and independently powerful. The final financial act of my redemption came with the public sale of the Hamptons estate, the last asset Victor had fiercely and unsuccessfully fought to protect in the patent battle. The sale was highly publicized, the proceeds channeled into the expansion of Hayes Design Labs and the Ethics Fellowship. The physical symbol of his fraudulent success was finally, completely converted into the engine of my new future. I received one final, profound piece of correspondence concerning Victor years later. It was a formal notification from a low-profile bankruptcy court. Victor Sterling had finally filed for complete personal bankruptcy, stripping him of the final residual assets he had managed to hide. His ruin was not just professional or social, it was absolute financial oblivion. He was left with nothing, exactly what he had tried to leave me. I looked at the document, and I felt nothing but quiet, immense peace. I did not celebrate his final ruin. I simply acknowledged the end of the narrative. I had won the war, reclaimed my life, and built a legacy of integrity far stronger and more resilient than the lie he had constructed. The years that followed were marked by the flourishing of my purposeful life. Hayes Design Labs expanded its practice into global manufacturing consulting, advising international bodies on ethical sourcing and IP protection, a final, ironic completion of the circle, ensuring that the system Victor corrupted now worked to enforce integrity. I had successfully transformed my personal trauma into systemic reform. I often held quiet evenings on the terrace of my new home, reflecting on the profound shift in my life. The shame was gone, replaced by the unshakable certainty of my self-worth. I realized that Victor had, in his malice, given me the greatest gift, the clarity, and the impetus to find my true strength. He thought I was a quiet, predictable partner. He was wrong. I was a professional strategist with the patience to wait for the perfect moment of exposure. I received a single, final piece of correspondence concerning Victor years later. It was a formal notification from a small, low-profile bankruptcy court. Victor Sterling had finally filed for complete, personal bankruptcy, stripping him of the final, residual assets he had managed to hide. His ruin was not just professional or social. It was absolute financial oblivion. He was left with nothing, exactly what he had tried to leave me. I looked at the document, and I felt nothing but quiet, immense peace. I did not celebrate his final ruin. I simply acknowledged the end of the narrative. I had won the war, reclaimed my life, and built a legacy of integrity far stronger and more resilient than the lie he had constructed. The shame was gone, replaced by the unshakable certainty of my self-worth. The final definitive act of my vindication came with the creation of the Victor Sterling Transparency and Ethics Fellowship. I used a significant portion of the Hamptons estate sale proceeds to establish a major, endowed scholarship at the University Engineering School, specifically targeting students dedicated to ethical IP protection and corporate transparency. The fellowship was named with icy precision after Victor Sterling. The press release, handled by my own firm, stated simply that the fellowship was established to honor the painful lessons of integrity learned during a significant professional period in Mr. Sterling's life. The move was brilliant in its subtlety and devastating in its finality. I did not praise him. I did not condemn him. I simply used his name as a permanent public synonym for the consequences of corporate malfeasance. Every year, ambitious, ethical young students would receive funding in his name, dedicating their careers to correcting the very kind of fraud he committed. The fellowship was a living, breathing testament to his professional downfall, ensuring that his legacy was not success, but a cautionary tale of absolute moral failure. Victor, operating somewhere in obscurity, tried one final, desperate act of sabotage. He sent an aggressive cease and desist letter to the university and the press, demanding that his name be removed from the fellowship, claiming the association was malicious and defamatory. The response was clinical and crushing. My lawyer simply cited the public record of his disbarment, the SEC allegations, and the divorce settlement, confirming the context of the painful lessons the fellowship honored. The university, eager for the positive publicity and the significant endowment, refused to back down. Victor, legally and financially neutered, was powerless. The man who had promised me forever was now permanently etched into the public record not as a business titan, but as the ghost of a fraud, his name repurposed to fund the very ethical standards he had spent his life violating. I had ensured his humiliation was not fleeting, but perpetual. My life today is proof that the greatest professional successes can be born from the deepest personal betrayals. I stand here, not as the discarded partner, but as Amelia Hayes, the CEO of Hayes Design Labs, the strategist who dismantled a fraudulent technology empire. Victor Sterling stole my code, my future, and my peace, believing I was an insignificant shadow. He thought I was broken and finished. He was simply blind to the quiet, analytical strength that underpinned his entire success. I used the map of his professional vulnerabilities, the backdoor I managed, to orchestrate a total, legal, and public humiliation. I forced his name to be synonymous with patent fraud, seized his most prized asset, and permanently cemented his legacy as a cautionary tale through the Victor Sterling Transparency and Ethics Fellowship. They called me weak, desperate, and broken. Now they call me unstoppable, ruthless, and free. The ultimate victory is not the money or the title, but the unshakable peace that comes from knowing you survived complete destruction and rebuilt a life based on a bedrock of unassailable integrity. He promised me forever and gave me nothing, so I made sure his forever ended in humiliation and the perpetual preservation of his shame.